Hello everyone, this is part 2 of my Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition review, and I'll just get right back into it. So the Demihumans are basically the non-human races, your dwarves, your elves, your gnomes, etc. And they have mins and maxes, minimum requirements, maximum requirements for the stats before the racial adjustment goes in. And the racial adjustment is a +1. I know in 3rd edition it was +2 -2, but it's +1 -1. And there's also other racial abilities and traits that I'm really not going to go into. Most of them are pretty standard for the different races. But anyone can be a human, no matter what your stats are. Doesn't really matter. It's just the demi-humans that have the requirements. Yeah, went into the racial adjustments. There are class restrictions and level limits for the demi-humans. And this has been one of the things that can turn people off of this game. Again, I talked a little bit about that in the last video, but humans can be any class, and that is sort of their adaptability bonus. They can really do whatever they want. The other races are more narrowly defined by what they can be. And here's a quote from the book. The other races have fewer choices of character classes, and usually are limited in the level they can attain. These restrictions reflect the natural tendencies of the races. The limits also exist for play balance. And again, I've gone into sort of a rant on games keeping the demi-humans down. But if you're okay with that, and you kind of see that the other races get benefits that the humans don't get, such as infravision, and it's sort of like dark vision from like 3rd edition, but it's more dealing with heat, then it's okay. It's kind of like part of the implied setting, and it is what it is. You either like it or you don't like it. You can modify it with house rules, or you can just go with how the book is written. I was going to go through and talk about the races, but really they're pretty much, they are what they are. They are a little bit different than 1st edition, and again, some of the restrictions and multi-class combinations of some of the demi-humans kind of make sense for if you're being a dwarf, a standard traditional fantasy dwarf, standard traditional fantasy elf, etc. So I'm really not going to go into those, but it's worth checking out and weighing your options when you're a player and see what interests you. As I said before, I like the multi-class sort of feeling to how things work. Putting XP in both classes at the same time. But again, those classes are determined by what race you are. So it is what it is. What else have we got in here? All the different classes are broke down into 4 groups. There are the warrior group, the wizard group, the priest group, and the rogue group. And basically that's the standard 4, the big 4 of pretty much AD&D, D&D. The warriors are fighters, rangers, and paladins. The wizards are mage, illusionists, and basically specialists. Priests are clerics, druids, and other sort of divine casters. Rogue is a thief and a bard. Those are the ones that are listed. And each of them have class ability, score requirements. Again, the classes, you really have to dig into the details of them. There isn't too much detail involved. Some of them are a little bit different than you might expect. So basically, if you're playing one, just make sure you jot down the specific information on your character sheet. Yeah, I don't know. The rogues pretty much have the 100% skills, and you get bonuses depending on what race you're being. And dex bonus, of course, goes in that, as well as armor percent penalties. And you have pretty much discretionary points to put wherever you want. There are some tricky details and restrictions in each of the classes and races, and again, you just really have to dig into them and see what they are, and just take note of them. That's all you really have to do. There's a section on alignment and the definitions of alignment, because we've all had arguments at the table as far as what counts for what, and how it all works together. I'm going to show you guys some art and I'm just going to talk over that art, and that probably will finish out the review of pretty much the player's handbook. I'll probably go into more detail with the Dungeon Master's Guide when I get to it. Okay, I'll see you there. Okay, I'll be showing you some pictures and pretty much just talking over them. As I said before, the weapon proficiencies and the non-weapon proficiencies are optional, and there's lots of information, lots of pages to define what those are. There's a table that shows the number of proficiencies to start with and what you get at higher levels. Weapon specialization is an option for fighters. There's also secondary skills, which are basically broad areas of knowledge. And there can be more of these, of course, but they're kind of to fill in some of the holes. You can have like carpentry or any sort of thing like that, weaponsmithing. There's, of course, equipment and encumbrance. And magic is interesting. I noticed this one thing that said that you don't get your dex bonus to AC while you're casting. That's kind of a big blow to casters, and it kind of weakens them. I don't know if many people use that rule, but I thought that was interesting because mages are known to be very powerful at high levels, especially. Some of the other things I noticed: range of 0 is basically it can only be used on the caster, and touches, of course, on others. The components are the same as 3rd edition: verbal, semantic, and I can't think of the other one. Basically, there's 3 components. I can't think of what they are. The duration. Casters can dismiss spells whenever they want if they're in the duration of when they cast them. There's instantaneous spells, permanent spells, and spells that are variable with how long they last. I thought casting time for spells was the default rules, but I learned that was optional. So the way the optional rules work for casting time is the casting time of each spell is added to the caster's initiative. And then that would tell you how long they're actually moving their hands around and talking their mumbo-jumbo. Let's see here. And basically the spell goes off at the end of the last round that, basically if their casting time was 4 and they rolled a 4 for initiative, they go on 8. And initiative starts out 1 and then climbs up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't start at 10 and go down. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Some spells take a turn or more to go into effect. And for saving throws, on a successful save, there are some that have no effect, some that have half damage, etc. There's a bit on experience and training and whether or not you can level up as soon as you get the experience, or if you have to go back to town. 0 hit points is death, and that's the way some of the other games, the older games, work. And that's interesting because I found in hindsight, after playing lots of 3rd edition, that even though it was a good thing at times, you would think, to get down to like -10 and be able to still be alive, it can be boring for players. Because you're not really involved in the combat. You're just laying on the ground watching everybody else play. And I don't know, it's an interesting thing to think about. What's better, to be laying on the floor for the duration of the combat unconscious and not being able to participate, or to die and then start working on your character again, or be resurrected, whatever the GM has in store for you. I don't know, I think I kind of like the 0 hit points is death. I think that as long as players know that, there's no downtime, there's no rounds of stun or anything like that. Initiative is every round. It appears to be an unmodified D10, unless you're using the optional casting time rules and the speed for your weapon. Let's say you have a long sword and it has I think it has a speed of like 4 or 5. You basically, if you roll like a 4, plus 5 is 9. You'd actually go on 9. So it's just telling you that you're just it takes a little bit longer to swing your sword. And I like simple initiative systems, and this seems like it's pretty simple. There's some minor math involved, but in play it actually worked out pretty well. I enjoyed it. For FACO, to hit armor class 0, that's pretty much an acronym, and that's basically what you can, that number that's listed is what you need to roll or above that to hit. So for armor class 0, you would need like a 20 or a 19 at first level, and it gets easier as you level up. I know in the older games they just have like a 2-hit matrix, and you can still do that on your character sheet. Just write your FACO and then adjust the numbers accordingly as you go up or down in armor class. Let's see here. There's slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning weapons, and mostly this only really affects things if you have restrictions, like if you're a cleric, you can only use bludgeoning, or there's certain type of monsters that can be hit and can't be hit in certain situations, depending on what weapon you use. There's optional rules for weapons type, like a weapons type, that's the slashing, piercing, or bludgeoning, versus different sorts of armor, which, while interesting, seems like it'd be kind of a pain in the ass optional rule to put in. And for impossible ACs to hit, 20 always hits, and a 1 always misses. There's no critical wounds or damage in AD&D, but I've known a lot of GMs to house roll that in and just basically maybe do double damage when someone rolls a 20. Okay, as I said before, a round equals a minute, 10 rounds is a turn, and a turn equals 10 minutes. And some spells last for multiple turns, as I said before. The standard initiative of the game, instead of having individual initiative for each player, each character, is to roll a d10 for each side. The lowest die roll, whoever rolls it for that side, goes first, and then it goes into ascending order. So if there's multiple sides in a combat, you can roll for your goblins, and maybe you have some bandits, and then the players, so maybe there's 3 sides in that combat. There are some optional modifiers and optional bonuses to initiative. As I said, weapon speed, weapon size, and individual initiative if they're doing that optional rule. And I kind of like that there's optional rules in the game. It gives more of a toolkit approach, I think, a little bit than, say, than first edition does. First edition pretty much says, this is how it is, and this gives you a little bit of leeway to pick and choose what you want. But in first edition, you can really, there's less rules there, so you can just really house roll everything. You just put in whatever you want anyway. There's multiple attacks, additional attacks after you get up in levels, especially for fighters. Spells can modify initiative by casting time, like I said before, if the GM is using those optional rules. There's combat actions, and I love that there's friendly fire rules. I love the fact that if I shoot into combat, I could possibly hit my allies, because that is realistic. I missed that in later editions. It's a risky idea to shoot into combat when your friends are there. I don't know if you've ever shot a gun or actually shot a bow in real life, but I know my father always told me, okay, you're standing beside me, never in front of me when I'm shooting this thing, and that goes for you as well. So there's a reason that my dad did that, because he didn't want us getting shot. Just because this game is, kind of fantasy doesn't mean that, people didn't get shot in the back of the head with arrows or whatever if their fellow, party members decided to risk it. So I like that there's friendly fire rules in this game. Here's a thing that I thought was interesting. Saving throws can be modified. And I think that's rarely done, especially in modules that have listed saving throws associated with them. Listen to your players, and if they give you ideas for how they're going to change things or how they're going to do things, then you can give them bonuses. There's things on monster resistance. I'm sorry, not monster resistance, magic resistance and how it works. Talked about the surprise rolls and just hireling information. And there's a very large list of spells. In fact, that's most of the player's handbook. And the one thing that really kind of surprised me at the end was that there's no character sheet at the back of the player's handbook. I didn't really see one in my version. It's the one with the guy on the horse, so maybe I have an earlier version. And I think there was a 97 printout that had more in it. But alright guys, that's pretty much my player's handbook. I will hopefully get back with the DMG stuff in short order.